Good evening, everyone. This is a special City Council meeting, Tuesday, February 11, 2020. Call the meeting to order, please.
Vice Mayor Lozano.
Here.
Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember Campion. Councilmember Lamson.
Here.
Mayor Sandu.
Here. Arise for the silent prayer and the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Tina, may I have a replay statement, please?
This meeting of the Galt City Council will be cablecast on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel, on the Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T Uverse cable systems. The meeting is closed captioned at webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will air Saturday, February 15th at 2 p.m. and Sunday, February 16th at 9 p.m. A DVD copy is available for checkout from any library branch. Also, we did get notified this evening that our live stream is up and running, so we are live this evening.
All right, next agenda item is B, council, any agenda approval, addition, and deletion. All right, move along. The next agenda item is presentation. There is no presentation. Now, can you read public comment, please?
Under Government Code Section 54954.3, members of the public may address the City Council on non-agenda items. The public comment section is for the City Council to receive comments, except for brief responses to questions. No discussion or action may be taken on any item that is not listed on the agenda. Please limit comments to a maximum of 5 minutes. Speaker cards are located on the table inside the entrances to the council chambers. Once completed, forward the speaker card to the clerk. Those persons wishing to speak on any item scheduled on the agenda will be given an opportunity to do so at the time that item is being considered.
Right, next agenda item is report by city.
We have one non-agenda item.
Oh, okay, can you read the name?
On the non-agenda item is Robert Crowdy.
My name is Robert Crowdy. I'm representing concerned citizens of Galt from the west side. In 1969, a quitclaim deed gave the city of Galt the 44-acre fairground property as a gift, and the Galt Herald newspaper reported on October 12, 1978, Galt's $1.25 million city hall, paid for by a federal grant, is now 25% complete. And according to the city manager, Joe Tanner, the $605,000 community center, now called Littleton Center, is between 15 and 20% complete. No assembly bill was required for either of these projects, which are located on Fairgrounds property. On June 27, 1985, the city issued certificates of participation to build a sports complex. Original issue amount was $605,000 at 5% to 8.7% interest over 25 years, with a due date August 1, 2010, placing the Parks and Recreation Department into debt. The money from the sale of Fairgrounds property to Farmers and Merchants Bank under Assembly Bill 3773 was never used to build a park. The Galt Herald newspaper reported on October 13, 1988, the Galt Planning Commission will consider approving a 98-unit subdivision over 81 acres on land along Highway 99 on the east side of Highway 99. No water well was built on the east side of Highway 99, so when construction began, Water was transmitted from underneath the freeway to the west, from the west side to the east side. Loss of water pressure shut down McDonald's restaurant for a day, causing a loss of profits. In 1990, the city entered into a long-term agreement with Greg Lukenbill, owner of the Sacramento Kings, to build the Galt Shopping Center and Greer Middle School. Sales tax generated from the shopping center for the next 20 years was given as an incentive to pay for partial costs to build the shopping center, a loss to the city. The Walnut Avenue Overpass project was never completed. The city of Galt collected fees for years to fund the project, but had to return the fees to homeowners. Poor city planning on Lincoln Way project caused major financial problems for businesses along that corridor during the early 1990s. Narrow streets were planned and constructed in a subdivision next to Ayers Lane, making it difficult for fire trucks and emergency vehicles to enter for planning. Not all of city's lighting and landscape districts were created with inflationary funding mechanisms. Today, this is causing major financial problems for the city of Galt. The city purchased a small portion, or should I start over again? The city purchased back a small portion of the fairgrounds property that was sold to Farmers and Merchants Bank as permitted under Assembly Bill 3773. The purchase price for this small piece of property was higher than the original sales price for the total property. The city recently sold property that was purchased when I was on the city council for future parking for the Galt Market. Did anyone on the council know why the property was originally purchased before they sold it? Two council members negotiated a garbage rate deal, placing the current and future business owners into a long-term financial crisis for up to 20 years, without knowing what the cost to business owners would be before approving the contract. The city has told us over and over again how much money the Galt Market loses each year, but they still have not answered my request for accounting of all revenue the city brings in each year from all activities that take place on the total 44-acre fairgrounds property, excluding the Galt Market. The city of Galt received a grant in 2017 for $650,000+ to cover the cost of 3 items. Number 1, Climate Action Plan, CAP. 2, Transportation Corridor Master Plan, Carillion Boulevard. 3, Master Plan, Galt Market, Fairgrounds. The city has not submitted a plan for item 2 or 3 to the citizens of Galt yet. Please do not vote tonight to give Assembly Member Jim Cooper approval to submit a spot assembly bill. Do not add to the plan of poor planning.
Thank you, Mr. Cardy. All right, next agenda item is report by city council members on regional boards, commission, and committees. Council member Farmer.
Nothing to report.
Vice Mayor Lozano.
Yeah, just briefly, we had a Policy and Innovation Committee meeting for SACOG yesterday, and one of the topics that we discussed was a Sacramento Regional Transit and Paratransit Incorporated sent out a joint statement saying they were going to dissolve their long-term partnership, and that Regional Transit would be taking over paratransit operations within their jurisdiction. So it's kind of a big deal. The other things discussed were cap-to-cap tour of SACOG going back to the U.S. Capitol to lobby our representatives for funding regarding transportation and housing. There was also some discussion about this year's CAFR, which is the SACOG's report of expenses and finances for the year, and there was no reportable findings, which is good. And it's been a few years since that has been the outcome of the CAFR. So good news to report is that it looks like we're back on solid ground in terms of the finances there. And I think that's pretty much it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I actually do have something to report. I forgot. I'm sorry.
Yes, sure. Go ahead.
Thank you. I attended the first Public Safety Commission meeting since I was assigned to that. And it was a good meeting, had a lot of people attending. We heard some comment from some citizens that had sent some complaints in. Traffic is always one, but that was a big one we talked about. We discussed some ideas of how to make the commission more proactive as far as members coming back with quote, homework each time. And we're talked about some different ways to engage the community to get more input. But the reporting from fire and police was good. We talked about homeless issue, which is always a big topic. Talked about that. So overall, it was very good. I was elected the chair, so I thank my fellow committee members for giving me that seat. So I look forward to getting back on that committee after I left it to be on council. So it's something I am greatly interested in, is public safety. So that's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Council Member Lamson.
Thank you. I attended the Air Quality Board meeting, and we had some discussion, and some people came and gave testimonies on the poor neighborhoods in Sacramento. They've done studies. The poor neighborhoods tend to have the most air pollution, and those people that live in those neighborhoods suffer from the most health problems, cancer, asthma, and we've really got to get on that and start working on getting those areas with their air cleaned up. And also, good news, we should be getting an electric bus with the high school, grammar school district, so I hope they have a place to plug it in. But every district is supposed to be getting a bus. So hopefully that will encourage them to get more once they see how much money they can save with maintenance and with the air pollution. So.
Thank you, Lamson. I have nothing to report. Next agenda item is information consent calendar. Tina, can you read for me?
A motion for, 1, accept the minutes as submitted, and 2, receive and file warrants for the period ending January 22nd, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Motion moved by Vice Mayor Lozano, second by Council Member Farmer. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Vice Mayor Lozano,
Aye.
Councilmember Farmer,
Aye.
Councilmember Lamson,
Aye.
Mayor Sandu.
Aye. Thank you. And the next agenda item is schedule matter notice of public hearing. There is none. Regular calendar, treasurer office report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Council members. Before you have the Treasurer's Report for December 2019. And I want to just mention that in years 2017, 2018, the Federal Reserve raised interest rates 7 times. And in 2019, they lowered interest rates 3 times. So to give you some perspective, we as the city were able to take advantage of those higher interest rates. So we bought, I'll say, longer-term bonds. And as a result, just in the first 6 months of the fiscal year 1920, which we're right in the middle of, then the city has earned $735,000 in interest. We've never earned that much in 6 months in like the last 12 years. So that's good. The problem is, because the Fed lowered the rates in 19, that means that you're not going to expect, or don't expect, 735 again for the second 6 months. That's not going to happen. It's more going to be like around about 450, 500,000. All total for the fiscal year, it'll be about 1.2 million, which again, we've never earned that much in the last 12 years either. So, and I also remind the public that even though we have earned that much in interest, not all of it goes into one fund. Like, for instance, the general fund. It's spread out among about 35 different sub-accounts. So just keep that in mind as well. Today's 3-month Treasury bill is at 1.55%, while the 5-year Treasury is at 1.41. So you still get better rates by investing shorter term, okay? And the LAIF rate, which the majority of our money is in right now, is, as of December, it was at 2.04%, At the end of this past month, January, it was at 1.97. So it is slowly coming down too. It always lags. With that, I'll ask that the council approve the treasurer's report for December 2019.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Anybody, public comment? Do we have a motion to accept the treasury report as submitted?
So moved.
Motion moved by Council Member Lamson,
Second.
second by Vice Mayor Lozano. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Vice Mayor Lozano,
Aye.
Councilmember Farmer,
Aye.
Councilmember Campion, Councilmember Lamson,
Aye.
Mayor Sandu.
Aye. Thank you. Motion passed with 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. Next agenda item is City Manager's Office. Subject, proposed assembly bill pertaining to 44 acres comprising the Galt market surrounding city-owned properties. City Manager Haglund.
Mayor Sandu and members of the council, good evening. As the introduction notes, this item pertains to 44 acres comprising in part the Galt Market and surrounding city-owned properties, and has been the topic of a number of discussions over the course of the last year on the part of the city council, and was the subject of a number, I think maybe 8 or 9 public presentations this last fall. And this item relates to that 44 acres, which was originally property transferred to the city from the state of California pursuant to the statutes of 1969. Under those particular originating statutes, the land was to be substantially used for parks and recreation purposes. Then in 1982, the state legislature passed legislation and the governor signed Assembly Bill 3773, which amended the original quitclaim deed to amend or modify the deed restrictions and to specify acceptable uses of the property. Under AB 3773, the city was allowed to sell a few acres, approximately 4 acres, and utilize up to 7 acres for the development of the City Hall facility, Littleton Center, and some other development within the overall area. Also, under AB 3773, there was a use provision that was approved, which was to allow a city-operated flea market on the property with the condition that the rents earned from the operation of the flea market would be used for parks and recreation purposes within the city. And then any remaining acreage that wasn't used for the Galt market was to be used for parks and recreation purposes. And so the market has historically provided, both before and after AB 3773, the single largest source of revenue for parks and recreation programming in Galt, and that's very important. It's very important for our ability to provide parks and recreation programs, but it's also very important to the underlying general fund of the city. Over time, the landscape of the market has changed, and for whatever reason, or sets of reasons, or combination of factors, since 2005, the market has lost more than $1 million in annual revenue, and parks and recreation costs have increased about $800,000 in that time. And so that's not all just programming for parks and recreation. It's not talking about t-ball and basketball entirely. That also relates to the Parks and Recreation facilities, which the city has constructed over that period of time as well, and the costs associated with the ongoing upkeep of something north of 22 or 23 Parks and Recreation properties in this city. That reduction in market revenue and the increase in Parks and Recreation expenditures have conspired to create a very significant deficit in the Parks and Recreation Fund itself. That deficit right now runs between $1.2 and $1.4 million annually. In the face of a $1.2 to $1.4 million deficit, the bills still have to be paid. And so what the city had been doing for a number of years is paying those costs from the city's general fund. Well, the city's general fund, unfortunately, wasn't large enough to have operating revenue that could pay those bills, so the city's savings were used. And the city reduced its savings on the order of many millions of dollars over the course of those few years, to a point where in September of this past year, September 3rd, 2019, this council took some very significant actions to balance the general fund, which involved cutting more than $1 million from the general fund itself, and likewise reducing services to the community. So the market's downward trend in being able to generate revenue is in contrast to other economic indicators. We know that both the Galt flea market, or Galt market, and the broader state and national economies suffered under the Great Recession. We can see the very same dips in revenue from our market that correspond to the dips of the Great Recession back in 2008 and 2009. And we can then see a bit of recovery both in the market and the Galt market and in the broader California and national economies. But the broader economies have continued an upward trend, a growth trend, since 2009. Whereas, except for that bit of an increase in Galt market revenue coming out of 2009 into 2010 and partially in 2011, the overall trend has continued downward at the market. And because the market plays such a significant role in funding parks and recreation programming in this city, and because the deficit in parks and recreation plays such a significant role in creating a deficit in the city's general fund, the real question is, in the harsh morning light of things, do we continue that downward trend? Do we continue a trend in which we're cutting other city services in the general fund in order to balance out the deficit in the Parks and Recreation Fund? And more importantly, how long can that actually continue before the underlying basis of the city's financial structure is impinged to a point that we're prevented from paying bills that we should otherwise pay? And so one of the ideas that was generated, this was before my arrival as your interim city manager, but was nonetheless generated and the city was moving forward with, was utilizing grant funds from the state of California to take a look at the development of something called the Galt Market Community Plan. How could these properties that comprise this 44 acres be used in different ways to include the continuance of the Galt market, but could they be used in different ways designed by the community to generate revenue so that we could apply that revenue towards parks and recreation, much as we did before the market started its 15-year decline. And so that Galt Market Community Plan is that very initiative. It's underway. It was the subject of the community presentations that I referred to a few minutes ago, back in September and October, and I think wrapping up in November, in which we did outreach to major stakeholder groups, to the community. We participated in a forum that was conceived by the Chamber of Commerce to be able to bring about this discussion and continue to try to get the word out to the community about participating in this plan. That plan will continue over the course of this current calendar year. And we anticipate that it would wrap up sometime by November or December. Tandem to that, the city had met with and been entering into discussions with a development group, the Lewis Group of Companies, so that we could try to marry up, or the city could try to marry up, the potential of what the community defines as for the Galt Market Community Plan development. That is what the community comes up with as an idea of what that could look like, with that being the public side of things, with the private side, which is an actual development company that develops projects, whether that includes residential components, commercial components, and the like, as a means of testing out whether or not the Galt Market Community Plan, as conceived by the members of the community, could bear fruit to the benefit of parks and recreation, with more stable long-term funding as a component of that Galt Market Community Plan. And so some of the limitations that exist in trying to achieve either or bring a public-private partnership about are the AB 3773 limitations on what the property can be used for. We oftentimes refer to those as the deed restrictions, which is essentially what they are. And so what we have talked about, what the city talked about back in 2018 and 2019, and as we went through our community presentations, was that the issue that needed to be teed up was AB 3773's deed restrictions, whether those could be modified in a way that was acceptable to the city council, and that could they be modified in a way that would allow a Galt Market Community Plan as designed by the community itself, and then developed consistent with that design by a developer. Could those deed restrictions be modified in a way that would contribute ongoing revenue to parks and recreation to help, stem the downward cycle of the market itself, the revenue being generated from the market itself, and increase that. Really one of the first orders of business here is to try to figure out means and methods and ways in an evolving economy to preserve and protect the long-term funding of parks and recreation. Because if the market revenue were to go away, that would be very unfortunate for Parks and Recreation programming in our community. And while that isn't an instant this year or next year problem in my view, it is nonetheless a problem over the course of the next several years, 5 to 7 perhaps. And that at some point, even as if the market continues its 15-year trend of a reducing revenue stream and an increasing overall expenditure stream, there will come a point faster than we might expect that expenses will exceed what the market is able to generate to cover. And that really becomes one of the critical factors. So the item before you tonight is a continuation of our discussion from earlier in January and earlier in 2019 about taking a look at potential modifications to Assembly Bill 3773 in a way that will help the city recognize a changing fiscal environment and pursue means and methods that will help us generate income for Parks and Recreation from those 44 acres. And so we met with Assemblyman Cooper's office. Interestingly, I think some of the council members may have been at the presentation, I think it was in November, at the Chamber of Commerce membership meeting. Senator Galgiani was there, and there was a presentation on this very topic. And one of the things that the senator offered at that time was to assist the city at the appropriate time to pursue legislative modifications. And so this has been a topic of discussion for quite a while. And tonight, what we would propose doing is working with Assemblyman Cooper's office to introduce what is referred to as a spot bill or spot legislation, single item, with language that would do nothing more than secure a bill number and indicate the intent of what an ultimate bill or bill language would seek to do. And that language is in your staff report. Essentially, it can be encapsulated in section 1 of what Assemblyman Cooper is prepared to introduce for the city. And it would say, it is the intent of the legislature to enact legislation that would remove deed restrictions on certain land of approximately 48 acres located within the city of Galt. This is placeholder language. This isn't really language that the legislature could act upon because it's intent language. It's merely spelling out that the bill number that would be assigned would ultimately be amended with language approved by this city council in concert with public meetings and public discussion, if that ultimately is the decision of the city council to deal with the deed restrictions that are currently on the property pursuant to AB 3773. And so tonight's item, consistent with our previous discussions, seeks the council's authorization to ask Assemblyman Cooper to introduce that legislation, perhaps even work with Senator Galgiani's office on that legislation, or the introduction in both houses, and to then move that forward through public discussion here in this chamber with this council, ultimately amending the language, the placeholder language, with language that this council is comfortable with, or ultimately not asking that the bill no longer be considered. But because we have timing associated with the introduction of legislation, we do need the spot bill, the bill number pulled by February 21st. And this is a means by which to preserve that opportunity to the city and then provide the city time to work out language that it's comfortable with and seek Assemblyman Cooper's amending of the placeholder language. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the council might have, and I'll open it up for that. Oh, I guess I do want to mention something else. Representatives from Assemblyman Cooper's office are here, the legislative director, Roy Cianez, and the district director, Mikey Hothy, are here, and they're happy to address any questions that the council has relative to the legislative process, how a spot bill works, what the intent language or placeholder language at this point is meant to achieve. They're happy to directly answer those questions if you have any.
Thank you.
Actually, I would like it if you could explain to us how that works, because a lot of the rumors out there that we're changing the law right now. What exactly are we asking for, and what is going to happen, and what has to happen after that?
Yeah, as Tom very well described, this is just intent language, and intent language is exactly what it sounds like. We intend to do something. What that something is, to be determined, right? But as Tom said, there's a deadline, February 21st. So if you miss that deadline, you basically have to wait till January 1st, 2021 to introduce a bill. So you have to have something introduced by the 21st to give yourself a bill number. It's a blank slate, right, intent language, and then you kind of fill in the blanks as you move through the legislative process. The legislative process is 8 months. So you have 8 months to fill in the blanks.
Thank you.
You know, I have a question. The February 1st is the dead to have a spot bill, right?
It's-
And what's the last date we have to amend? Is March 18?
No, it's August 21st is the last day to amend a bill on the floor.
But
So
I,
assuming the bill moves through the process and it hits the assembly floor in August, you'll have until August 21st to make any last minute changes before a final vote.
but I see that email come from Roy.
That's me,
and-
yeah.
And it say, if you the email, look at the email you sent to Amy, you said is March 18.
Yeah, so there's two deadlines we're talking about. We're talking about a deadline to amend a spot bill and then a deadline to amend a bill, period. So if the council decides to move forward with the spot bill, again, it's a blank slate, so you need to have substance into that bill by March 18th. So you have to come up with something, right? It just can't be blank. It has to be something substantive in order to get that bill referred to a policy committee. Because there's a rule in the assembly that says an intent bill will not be referred to a policy committee because it's not substantive enough.
Yeah, but if the,
So that's one deadline. And then after you get substance in it, you can amend it up until August 21st.
all right, if we don't have no language and we will assign a bill, one way or the other, as a hypothetical, if the council will not agree to go forward, or then what happen in?
The bill doesn't move. It doesn't move. It
So
just,
that's mean all you have for, or we asking you guys doing us a favor is worthless, right?
well, I mean, the perspective of the assembly member is every year he reaches out to each of the cities in his district, Elk Grove, Galt, Lodi, South Sacramento, and he asks, what do you need legislatively? What assistance do you need? I'm here to help. So he doesn't see it as a burden. He sees it as doing his job as an assembly member representing his cities.
No, that's why thank you for Jim Cooper on his staff.
Sure.
You know, you guys doing what we ask you as a city.
Right.
But this is a very, I'm just asking if that happened, then what is going to happen?
It's not a burden, no. I mean, every bill we introduce doesn't necessarily move. Some bills move, some bills don't move. Other bills, they get changed. So it's not a burden whatsoever. We're happy
And-
to work with the city on this issue.
The other question, if we don't meet that time, then we just only a year, right? Then we can do the same thing the next year, right?
Yeah, essentially, you have to wait till January 1st, 2021 for the new legislative session. Because we're in year 2 of a 2-year legislative session. So it ends on August 31st. It's over.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
And I'll let one of my other council members talk. So you met recently with some citizens of Galt, came and spoke to both you and Mikey. Is that correct? Last week?
Correct, yeah. Robert Crowdy, yes.
Well, there was like 7 people or 8.
Right, but he submitted a meeting request, and we scheduled the meeting in the district office last Friday, I
Well,
believe.
so 2 things were kind of passed on to me that were interesting is when they were talking about the process and how it works. It was told to me that ultimately it would be Cooper's bill, and he would be in control of the language and not the city council. I was told those were your specific words.
No, it's true. I mean, the assembly member introduces a bill, so it has his name on it, so ultimately he has ultimate control. But obviously, we're working in partnership with the city, so we're not gonna go in a direction that the city doesn't want.
Also, I guess, I don't know if it was you or Mikey that was asked, if the bill was created, and what's the likelihood that if later it was decided we didn't want it to go forward, or it got squashed, was the word used, what's the likelihood that would happen? And your response was, or it was either you or Mikey, your response was, well, I've never seen that happen.
Well, again, we're working in partnership with the city, so we're not gonna do anything that the city doesn't want us to do
Right.
in the bill.
I'm just trying to establish how often that happens, how often a bill gets put in play, and then, for lack of a better word, the ball starts to roll, and then how often does that ball stop? So,
It happens all the time, yeah. So last year, there was over 2,500 bills introduced. Not all of those 2,500 bills reached the governor's desk.
and then, so a second ago, you said something to the mayor that was, it made me think of something. And I do appreciate Assemblyman Cooper's support and Senator Galgani's support. But what's interesting is you said something that kind of I thought about. You said, we're here to help. We're here to do what you want, and we're here to support. So it makes me think of exactly if they know what they're supporting. Because it's one thing if a good friend came to me and said, hey, Sean, would you support me if I ever needed help from you? Absolutely. You let me know what you need. But it's another thing to know exactly what you're supporting. It goes back to one thing in the resolution that was passed in July of last year, which I have here and I've been reading through it over the last week, is that one of the specific things that this council as a whole voted 3-2 at the time to authorize was to give direction to staff to explore whether or not there would be support if legislative change should be needed. So for me to explore whether or not would be support would be very easy. We go to Jim Cooper, say, hey, if we have something, we have this plan that the community likes and the council approves it and we move forward, would you help us? He says, absolutely. You let me know what I can do for you, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves by putting this spot bill in place. I understand the concept of it, and I've read through this, and I actually did some research on my own today about how that works. And so I get it, I understand that, but I just feel that we're just kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit. We're kind of, we entered this agreement with Lewis Group, last July, and as of this moment, we still don't have a plan in place. We still don't have a vivid plan, so there's no real plan. There's not exactly language yet. We're supposed to add that, but we're now putting a bill out. It made me think of, I have a little story real quick, and I'm going to let somebody else speak here. I heard a story so this elderly lady, she had a son and a granddaughter that she thought very highly of, and her granddaughter was of college age. And she passed away, and in a trust, she left her home, which had been her home for like 70 years, to her granddaughter with specific guidelines that she could only live in it, she couldn't sell the property, so on and so forth. And she gave her son, as he was the trustee of the trust, or the executor of the trust. So she passed away, the house went to the daughter. Well, the daughter applied, she was 4.0 student, she was doing very well, she had a bunch of offers from different schools. Well, she applied to an Ivy League school, and she was very excited that she was going to get in. So she went to her father and said, I can't afford this school unless I sell the house. So would you help me, Dad, change this legislation, change the trust to allow me to sell the house so that I could pay for the school? I really want to go. And, he thought, well, that's a great purpose. I think your grandmother would approve. So he went ahead and did that, and he got with the attorney, and he changed the trust. And subsequently, she didn't get into the school. Well, about a year after that, she decided she wasn't going to go to that school or another school. She basically sold the house, spent the money. 3 years later, all the money's gone, house is gone. So the story, when I heard the story, it reminded me of kind of the situation we're in, where I feel like we're really going to kind of open up this language. So what language are we going to author? Clearly, the language we would want to put in there, or that a developer would want to put in there, would be as wide open as possible, because we don't really know what the plan is. We wanted the most options possible. So if we put the spot bill in, comes back to council, we approve said verbiage that opens it up and says we can do whatever with the property, we can build whatever, and then something falls through with Lewis Group, now that restriction, which we were hoping we were deliberately going to remove for a specific purpose, is now not there anymore. So I'm just concerned that, again, we are putting things kind of a little bit out of order here. I would have rather have seen the Lewis Group do what I expected to see a long time ago, which was present a plan to us, present it to the community, because we had community forums, but I can tell you, there's not one person in the community that's come to me and said, I know exactly what the plan is. Nobody really knows. There was like ideas being thrown around, but a specific model of what we could do. Then if the community likes it, through community outreach, and then the council likes it, and the council approves it, if it requires legislative change, we can do that. I've read a lot of language in here about this market plan that talks about making the Galt market better and improving and all that. What I think is, we can do that with the restrictions that are currently on the 3773. So I clearly know that it's outside of that. There's a lot of misinformation floating around. I think there's a lot of lack of information, primarily. There's depending on who you talk to, we're not going to sell any property. But there's going to be a transfer of ownership, which is what staff reports say. Well, transfer of ownership is clearly defined as the passage of property from one hand to another through the sale of purchased property. So, and I've spoken to Lewis Group, they're only interested in buying property. It's clearly what they want to do. And they also said they're not interested in doing anything less than 30 acres, which leads me to my next question, which is, people have asked, well, what does it mean for the market? Are we getting rid of the flea market? Are we keeping the flea market? Some people say, well, no, we're going to keep the market. This has nothing to do with the market. We're just going to try to do some stuff with the property around the market to enhance the market. But clearly, if they're only looking at developing large amounts of property based on how much, the maps with how many acres is what, and so on and so forth, there's clearly no way they can develop 30 or more acres without touching the flea market property and dipping into a pretty substantial piece of that. And then also, too, it's all over in the reports, staff reports from last July, where it says that to determine terms and conditions on which the city may authorize the developer, Lewis Group, may purchase and develop certain properties. So clearly what we're looking at here, just to squash the elephant in the room, is the council is considering to sell some property, to develop it, to make it more lucrative to support Parks and Recreation. I just want to throw that out there. That's definitely what's going on. But my struggle here is that I'm not necessarily against ever doing anything to make that property better. I think there's a few key pieces that are definitely just, not only are they not developed, but they're eyesores and could be done something better. But in this particular instance, I want to be very cautious, because I think like I said, again, I feel like we're putting things in the wrong priority here. And I know we're up against this deadline, but it's deadlines and things like this that can make people rush, and as they say, fools rush in, so that's what I have to say at the moment. I'd like to let somebody else speak for a moment if anybody else has anything to say.
Thank you. Anybody else? Council, anybody have any question to the Jim Cooper's office or? Otherwise, I'm gonna move the public comment.
I'd like to hear from the public.
Get my,
All right,
yeah, let me get this.
speaker?
I have to get the timer up. The first one is Jay Vandenberg.
Just so everybody knows that I'm talking about, this to you just to share real quick, and then if you could pass this around to everybody for the same reason. I'd also like this to be entered into public record. Thank you. Hi, my name's Jay Vandenberg. Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and staff. I hope you're all doing well this evening. I would like to give a big shout out to our Galt Liberty Ranch cheerleaders and to all of those who helped them become national champions. Thank you so much for all your hard work and dedication. The City of Galt is very proud of you. Concerning the market property, a few weeks ago, I made a statement to the council that we cannot oppose something that has never been proposed. That same logic applies to changing an existing law for a plan that does not exist. The council has stated it wants community involvement in a yet-to-be-proposed plan. How are you going to present an unknown plan with an unknown law? This is clearly putting the horse before the cart. If Lewis Management wants to develop the land in Galt, why can't they use what I believe is referred to as the Notch property, what's in that piece of paper, a stone's throw northeast of the market land? It is of equal size. It does not require the Lewis Management to change the configuration of our market in any way. Has the City Council considered not altering the intent of the law in any way as it relates to revenues or selling of any land, but rather redesignating which portion of land the law applies to? Moving the market to the Notch property under the same protections would allow Galt to rearrange or fix the problems with the market such as parking, advertisement, ease of access without changing the law. This would give maximum protection to the citizens' assets and free up the old property. If changing the language of the law to develop the land is a good idea, it will be a good idea tomorrow as well as 10 years from now. If we change the existing law and either the Lewis Management backs out or the City of Council rejects the plan, we will be stuck with a law that is non-functional, one that may not protect the assets of the citizens and potentially a loophole waiting to be exploited in the future. The city's present actions feel like they are selling the citizens a house without knowing the details of the loan until it is too impossible to back out. My understanding is that the interim city manager will run out of workable hours soon. He is already forced into part-time hours by law. Are we really going to take on perhaps the largest historical change in the history of Galt without being fully staffed, with a divided council and with citizens divided and left in the dark? I agree that the city has been transparent, but what have you informed us of? There has been no actual plan presented, only the desire for change. Actions this important should have a city manager with a complete staff and a 5-vote consensus from the city council after an actual plan has been presented to the citizens so that they can provide feedback. The problem is not the decrease in revenue coming from the market. Everyone knows the special arrangement from the market is the golden goose that no city in the state of California has. By all appearances, the city seems to have given up on our golden goose. If we run our city like other bedroom communities, the market revenue would be an over and above as it should be. If this plan takes 2 years to get started and 1 to 3 years to construct, this could easily be a 4-year process. The City of Galt will still have to take corrective actions on the budget to avoid running a deficit. If we run a deficit, the city will be negotiating from a position of desperation instead of control. We must live within our means and not grasp for speculative dreams. And so I seem to have that next little extra time. I realize that what you're doing is setting a placeholder so that we can have our place in line for the legislative process, and changes can be made as we move forward. Between the garbage rates, T-ball rates, raises given as the city was losing money, the brown parks and streets from budget saving measures, all have fostered too much distrust for the citizens to let the city council lead us blindly down another path. Please don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to do the best thing here. I don't pretend to have all the answers. We simply cannot afford to be hasty. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jude. So Tina, may I have the next speaker?
Harry Wenzel.
Hi, I'm Harry Wenzel. I retired to Galt about 11 years ago. I'm not going to, for what I had, I'm not going to try and, go back over what was there. So the first thing I'd like to do is talk about transparency. I like the way the city has got stuff on the website and so forth. I'd like to make sure that the council understands that in 2018, there was revenue of $2.6 million. That's gross revenue for the market. And that resulted in $1.78 million in revenue in excess of the cost of doing that. That's a substantial amount of money. And then we are, and also in that same time period, before you put the allocation that goes back out of the Parks and Recreation, I've just shifted a gear here, to Parks and Recreation, of which the Galt Market is a piece of. Parks and Recreation actually did $450,000 of profit. When you take the Galt Market profit, and then you take all of the other revenues from the fees and so forth. So it's that allocation that gets them in 2018. 2019, you're going to see perhaps $800,000 of deficit in the Parks and Recreation. But that's only projected right now, and that'll only be a $129,000 reduction in revenue, okay? And a big portion of that is salaries. And I believe that was, I'm not really familiar with it, but I believe that was part of what happened when the raises of salaries. I like to point out Parks and Recreation doesn't have control over that. And there's other things they don't have control over. I don't think they had control over the allocation method. I haven't really dug into it, but it's a lot of money, and I understand everybody has to bear what they're doing. So from that standpoint, I would just bring up the question, or I'd like to just bring up the point. There's just a lot to talk about. In the 11 years that I've lived here, I've went to the Galt Market practically every week. I know a lot of vendors. And when I first spoke at the Planning Commission, it just spurred me on to start asking the questions. And there's a lot of study that needs to be done. We talk about stakeholders. It isn't just Lewis Group. They're a big stakeholder, but I think that those market vendors that have brought in about 40 million plus since 2015, they all have really quite a few. I ask them, so what's going on? What do you think is causing markets to go down? And they all recognize that it's going down. However, and they all have different ideas about what to do. And there's a lot of good ideas, and just in terms of even if you were to do away with the market, there's a lot of good ideas that I think you would pick up from these people that have brought us that $40 million. And I'm sure that myself as just a citizen of Galt, I'd like to hear it. But it needs to be studied. There is the downward trend, but it isn't just the downward trend, but it needs to be studied. So what I heard tonight is that it might be 6 or 7 years before we hit that point, and I think that point will be when the revenues don't even meet the cost of running the market. Okay, that's probably the probable point where we're all going to just yell uncle and do something else. But we need to be ready for it. There's no doubt. And then another thing I'm concerned about, because I have a pretty extensive analytic and business background, and we play a little bit different in government. But there's so many things, I think, so many details that need to be looked at. Just the simplicity of when you say, okay, now we're going away from the market, now we're going to build, okay? Whatever way you want to look at it, it's 2.6 million or 2.5 or 2.4 million dollars of gross revenue. It's 1.5, it's 1.3. For as long as that span just between when you take the market down and when you put the new revenue stream in, I think you have to take a look at that. And that's one of many of the important details that really need to be worked out. As far as the presentation, it's a nice presentation, but it isn't input really, and we need something, as was mentioned, we need something to look at, and then we also need maybe some brainstorming. There was a little bit of it at the chamber luncheon, but how do you get, plan A, plan B, plan C? So I don't know that there's a real rush to do what we're doing tonight, and that's for the city council to decide. But I watched the last meeting on just on the video that you can stream back over to your computer. And there were a couple of items. Mr. Farmer said, we're only going to get one shot at this. So timing of when you do it's important if you do something. And the other is, Mayor Sandu said, what we have to be careful of is that we don't influence in a way that maybe wouldn't be optimum for, just because now you've got the law ready, does this influence people in terms of the plan you pick? Anyway,
I'm
that's all I
sorry, your
have.
time is up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Harry. Thanks a lot.
Mr. Wenzel, I just wanted to let you know that I did respond to your email, but I heard, okay, I responded to several emails, and there was a person who said they didn't receive it, and so I want to make sure that you knew that I responded.
That's very appreciated.
All right, next speaker.
Sam Mitchell.
And Chris left. That's not fair. I wanted Chris to hear this. Anyways, just kidding. I wrote a bunch of stuff down, but Jay pretty much hit it on the head, and I'm sure other people will. I think in theme tonight, what you're hearing from a lot of the folks here is if it's a right decision today, it's a right decision 12 months from today, right? And we don't do well going into decisions with a lot of emotion. And look, I'm a financial analyst at a Fortune 100 company. I know what it takes to run that. I understand. I don't want your job. It's a tough job. And you're looking at the numbers, but we're looking at you guys to make sure that the decisions that are being proposed are correct. And if we only have 30 days of due diligence, that's not enough time. We can look at it in depth. Is even partnering with Lewis Group the right decision? How do we know that's the best for Galt? How do we even know that? Maybe there's a better developer out there. Maybe there's one that goes along with our CAP plan that we want to put in place. Who knows? We haven't even done that exploration. On top of that, I want to talk about declining flea market revenues. We haven't done anything to fix the business model. It's a 20-year-old business model. Of course it's tanking. You've given it no love. You've given it no attention. You've not nurtured it. You've not adjusted it to accommodate what's going on today. No one is going Tuesdays and Wednesdays is the argument I hear to buy Amazon crap. Yeah, they are, because there is still some revenue, right? Augment that. How do you augment that? You ever been to a farmer's market? You've been downtown Lodi at one of their farmer's markets? You've been to the Sprouts farmer's market in Elk Grove? Have you looked at the thriving nature of that, of the community that's instilled in that? There's people that live in that community that are gathering and getting together. The market stopped 10 years ago catering to the people of Galt and cater to folks that are coming in out of town to buy wholesale goods. It's time for the market to start to cater to the community again. That's how you increase the revenues. Change the darn business model. Look at Etsy. Etsy is jamming right now. Why? Because people want handcrafted goods. Look at all the upcycling that's going on. Go to the Stockton flea market and ask any one of those vendors, hey, if there was a better market for you other than Wilson Way to be open on a Saturday, would you go? How many of those folks do you think would come? They'll all come. It's an easy business model for them. They take the number of people that come, the amount of sales, hire staff. They will come if we change the business model. So I get it. We're using Parks and Rec as this ability to sort of maybe strike fear into this decision as it's something we got to do right away. Waiting 12 months isn't going to tank any Parks and Rec program. Little Timmy's still going to be able to play T-ball. They're all still going to exist. We're not gonna run out of money. We've not even really seen what the full benefit was from the new sign revenue, from the existing cuts that already came. We just made $700,000 in bonds. We haven't even sat down and took a moment to breathe in what we've just done in the last 12 months to see what the impacts were of those. And now we want to hurry up and rush into a development project? It doesn't make any sense. We haven't done any due diligence. This is a high-risk decision that's going to ultimately forever change the culture of Galt. We have the opportunity for Galt to be a unique town that has this cool market like it used to be in the old days. You know, my mom used to drag us up and down there in the old days, and you could talk to somebody that didn't know where Galt was, but they knew the Galt market. You know, it's not like that anymore, because why? It's a stale business model. Augment it. It's easy to do. It doesn't take a lot. And I did want to mention, I got a little bit of time left, none of this was a collaborative process. So I disagree with Mr. Hagelin's representation that this has been a collaborative process with the Lewis Group. This has not been a collaborative process. This has been us telling us what we were doing. Lastly, I know Mr. Cooper's here to support the city, and I really appreciate that, but you should be listening to the citizens of the city and not the city manager of the city. Because the citizens of the city do not want this. Do not want this. And I hope Mr. Cooper can get that from you guys. This is not what anybody wants here. Nobody wants to be Elk Grove. Nobody wants to be Lodi. We want to be Galt. We have our own identities. I moved away from this town saying I would never come back. I'm back. I love this town. This is where I live. I'm opening a business downtown. I know other folks here have business interests in town, right? There's a trickle-up effect that happens by you reinvigorating the flea market. You go to get farmer's market on Saturday, guess what? You're over at Cafe Latte, sorry, Sean, or Sean's place getting a cup of coffee, right? You're going and having lunch at Papa's and Wings, or you're supporting some other businesses that are around. You're not looking at any of that. You got a narrow mind focused on one thing, and that's the number. We're not applying any common sense or any real material sort of impacts that this decision has to make, and to just have it held over on a tentative idea is just poor planning. And I don't know how you guys could even support it, to be honest with you. It doesn't seem like something that's in the best interest of the voters. So that was it.
Thank you, Mitchell. Next speaker.
Barbara Payne.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Barbara Payne. I live within the city limits of Galt, in case you didn't know that. I'm here because I also have concerns about moving ahead with this whole idea. I honestly feel like there has been a lack of transparency. I've been to several of the meetings, and I've asked questions because I thought they had a plan that they could answer my question, like, are you going to demo the city hall, the library? Do we have money to replace it, and where? And I constantly got the same answer. We don't know yet. We don't have a plan. And Galt has a tradition of having a plan before they do anything. We have the general plan. We even have the park master plan. So it just seems, as it's been mentioned already, out of whack that we don't have a plan. How can you expect the citizens to support something or even object to something if you don't give them anything, if you don't have a plan? I'm trying to not repeat what everybody else has said. One of the things that bothers me too, just the thought of demoing all these buildings. As you may or may not know, I am head of the Earth Day celebration coming up. And the idea of demoing these buildings and putting them in the landfill just sort of goes against my grain. So I wanted to throw that out too. The other thing that I feel very strongly about this is not the right time to make this decision. Very soon, we're going to have a new city manager and possibly some new city council members. And I think that to try to push this forward now is something that we may regret and have to deal with in the future. And finally, let me just say this. The current bill has provided protection to ensure the funds from the flea market, well, at first it was said would go solely to the flea market, and then it got modified to substantially. And this kind of bothers me too. It's like it's easy to water down something from what it originally was meant to be. So I would fear if we even take this step, that we're going to go down a path that we're going to regret, and that the parks and their programs will be in jeopardy. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Next speaker.
Gary Goldsmith.
I'm Gary Goldsmith, and I had a big speech made out, and I left it at home. I forgot it. But anyway, I just want everybody to know that I've been going to the flea market for over 60 years. I enjoy the flea market. I enjoy the park. I know that the flea market hasn't been making the kind of money that it has in the past. But by the way, it didn't lose money. If it didn't make it, it didn't lose it. You know, you got to make it before you can lose it. And from what I understand, it nets about $1.5 million a year, and that's nothing to sneeze at. And maybe we ought to analyze what's going on, what's different from 5 years ago when it was doing good. I go up to Roseville Flea Market. It's busy, you know, and they charge a little bit to get in. I don't even remember what it is, $1 or something. No, nobody seems to mind paying for that. That would be a little extra income. You know, I just think it's terrible to even think about changing the state of California give us the grounds for recreation, and that's what we should use it for. And everything you see around Galt's Parks and Recreation, I think we're taking that $1.5 million that it makes and spreading it too thin. We need to kind of get some money coming in from something else to take care of all these parks. Obviously, the budget's not good enough to handle what we expect it to. And we just need to analyze what's going on, and maybe we can do a little better on the management of the park or the flea market. I don't know, you know, but something's not right. If it's not as good as what it was 5 years ago, the economy's better, everything else is better. It should be better. Anyway, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Julie Clark.
Good evening, council, and good evening to our guests, and most importantly, of course, the citizens of Galt. So this is a topic that is extremely important to me, and the reason that I feel slightly vindicated is that I saw this coming about 2 years ago when we first heard that there were possible discussions happening or little hints that discussions were happening. And so, as has been said by multiple people tonight, I firmly believe that we're putting the cart before the horse. But just to give a little bit of history, in 2016, our former city manager submitted an article to the Galt Herald where he introduces the idea of doing something with the flea market grounds. And as had been his prior experience and kind of interest, he had mentioned something about development. So that is where this current effort originated. And so I think it's only fair to educate the Assemblyman's staff that this is not a proposal which originated with the citizens, but rather with the bungling, shady city manager who left here after having been thanked for his service and paid handsomely to go away. So, and to reference the grant money that is used for the development of the Galt Market Plan, that was actually obtained under the auspices of, let's see, Energy Conservation, the California Department of Energy Conservation, I believe, which is rather interesting. So, but let's talk about legislative intent. The basic intent, in my mind, if we just boil it down to the very basics, is to provide a small town who may not have lots of resources with a recreational resource, okay? That's the basic intent. But why was it written in the way it was written? It was written that way to protect the resource from precisely the thing which is being proposed this evening, and to protect us from ourselves, to protect us from less than scrupulous or honest councils that, certainly not the current council, of course, but past councils and possibly those in the future, which, if this protection is removed, stands in jeopardy. We don't know what the future is going to look like. So the loss of revenue with uncertain resolution, and as the city manager, interim city manager, has told you tonight, we should believe the sky is falling. This decision should not be made from a place of fear. The city's inability to balance their own budget and subsidize even a small part of Parks and Rec costs, as many municipalities do, should not force us to give up the family farm. This is a long-term solution to a short-term problem, and you don't go selling the family farm because one of your crops has a bad or declining yield. You keep the farm and figure out new crops to plant or alternate ways of making the land pay. So let's talk about what the impact is. The loss of parkland, a community resource. The city has recently sold a parcel that was mentioned earlier tonight by Mr. Crowdy, that who knows where that money has gone. It's supposed to go to Parks and Rec purposes, but we're not sure. And our existing parkland inventory has already been reduced. Okay, so what happens when you have a reduced park inventory? It makes the community less desirable, and it puts pressure on existing park resources. So what's the question, in my mind, what's the highest and best use of land? We have certainly seen a decline in revenue. It's still a solid source of income. And the other parts of the 44 acres, in my mind, in some ways, can be arguably considered the heart of the community. It's where we come together on the 4th of July. It's where the youngest members of our community learn to play t-ball, learn how to do cheerleading, and the other resources, including this outdated but still fully functional and highly important civic building, the Littleton Center, which hosts almost every local nonprofit at some point during the year and is the place where the nonprofits derive the bulk of their yearly income and operating costs. This is a very, very important decision, and really, the people don't want this. This is coming from the wrong direction, and basically, what I heard you say is that you're here to help the city, but don't forget, the city doesn't vote for you, the citizens vote for you. So, I mean, vote for those who are in office. And the same thing I should say to you all, that you are here to listen to the people, and I have not heard one person tonight stand up and say, darn it, this is a great idea, I think you should go for it. So I will have serious reservations about the integrity of anybody who votes on the side of moving forward with this, because this is a Pandora's box that I think is very dangerous, and there's no urgency. There need to be other explorations. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Julie.
Carl Bonner.
I'm Carl Bonar, and I've lived in the town a long time. The recreation program in Galt is a legacy program. You didn't see, many of you haven't seen, I know Sean has, but the people that ran it, it was all volunteer. It was all high-spirited. They got along, and they put something into the kids' futures that they'll always remember. The activities that the kids participate in and the coaches that they deal with makes friendships that last forever. I've seen the kids come back and, touch base with their coaches, and it's really, really wonderful. But what we need here is just as we work through the process, which I agree with all of the comments made, as we work through the process, there's one thing you're going to have to make a decision. Are you going to support the youth and recreation and the parks program? If you're not, then we're just wasting our time. You're going to have to decide, is 150, $1.5 million participation, dollars put into the program by the flea market? If that's not enough, what are you going to do? Get rid of the whole flea market? And then what are you going to do? Are you going to support the program all on your own? I hardly think so. There aren't many programs in California that have the funding in any amount in the $150 million to three or $4 million in the past. So I think it's just a process of getting some confidence from the community that you're going to do the right thing. I've watched the council's actions all through the years, and there became a time when it became less community-oriented and became less or more secretive at times. It's been many years. I've watched in the paper for years Bob Crowdy never getting any information. If you've got, that's past business. If you can't wrap up the past business, then you're not ready to move on with the future business. If you're not going to give him the facts, how is he going to relate it to other people to get support for something you want to do? Let's work together on this. Let's open the doors of the vault, bring out the secrets, and show people what they want to know. And if you can do that, then you can probably get much more support much faster. But as far as meeting the legislative guideline at this point, yeah, I agree with the others. There's no way that you can rush to judgment on something like this. No plan, nowhere to go. We got to get a plan first, sell the plan, and when you see the plan is receiving support, then you can step into the legislative arena, and Jim Cooper's staff can help you. But we need to go forward on a sound basis here and not make rash decisions. We've seen the results of rash decisions over the years, not just in the past year or so. It's been there. It rears its ugly head every now and then. So let's do something that we can be proud of at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl.
Barbara Woods.
Good evening, the City Council and staff, and to the people that are here about this issue and about other things that are really important for our city. My name is Barbara Woods. I've been a member of this community for over a quarter of a century, I like to say, at this point. And I'm here in regards to speaking about AB 3773 and the quitclaim deed of 1969. This protection in terms of deed restrictions on the use and revenue of the fairgrounds property is a legacy, and I heard that word used another time too. This is a legacy that we have for Galt. When I first heard of it many years ago, I went, that's really cool. That's really cool that we have something there in place to help support our Parks and Recreation program. As a community member, I'm very concerned about the process I'm hearing and the timing of the process at this point in making a huge decision regarding this legacy. This is too serious of a matter to be rushed through. As one person said, if it's okay a year from now, after we've studied and done lots more input for that, then we can wait. Any consideration of monitoring the protections of these properties should be not considered lightly, and in my opinion, not considered at all. But I would be open to discussion. If my understanding of the intent of this legacy is correct, Galt should have an exemplary Parks and Recreation program. You speak of it as being a deficit, but if my understanding is correct, the income from the market and other entities is actually adding to the ability of our general fund not having to contribute so much to the Parks and Recreation program. So it's not a deficit, it's an addition, just not as much as an addition as we would like to have to support the entire program. So I would like to say that some of the things that have already been said, but marketing the market, advertising what we have to be a draw for other people from the region that are home buyers to look at Galt and what we have as a Parks and Recreation program, and to make it really unique, make it Galt, make it something that appeals to our young people even more so, and our other people like me that are older. And I would just ask that you not go forward at this time with any efforts to modify these protections. I ask that this matter be reviewed more so with citizen input, a work committee to explore a matter in which to continue this legacy in a way that will actually provide more for Galt, in a way that will enhance what we have, in a way that will bring in more people, which will then enhance our revenues all over for our general fund. I also would, I'm just looking at my notes, figuring out which things have not been said as much yet. I also am concerned that once you open the door, once you open that gate with even just a place marker, it moves forward. It tends to move forward. And we don't have the time to have it move forward in the correct way, I believe, in a wise way, in a prudent way. So I'm asking that you not go forward this time with any efforts to modify these protections. I ask, I think I said that already, and I apologize. I'm going to, let's be a city that has a vision for the future while protecting this legacy that has been gifted to us in the past. Let's look at it as a gift, not as a deficit. And let's see what we can do to preserve this legacy and come up with some solutions to really make a difference, both for the big idea of Galt and for Parks and Recreation of Galt. So thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Matthew Pratton.
My name is Matt Pratton, citizen of Galt. I represent myself. I'm not represented by any other entity or anybody else that's spoken tonight, but I have to say that I feel like I've been speaking for 30 minutes. I'm very impressed with the citizens and the dialogue that's gone on tonight. So, you know, where do I go? It started out with Mr. Vandenberg's speech, which covered, I think, most of what I had originally. Excellent. So I think I'm going to shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about, you know, your duty as a council member. It is your duty to make a decision. It is important. I've been in those positions many times where decisions need to be made. And believe me, I'm always the guy that says, let's do it today. I don't want to wait till tomorrow. I don't want to put things off. But when I look at this and I look at the language, you know, for me, if it was sitting in front of me, and I guess if you said the language was, the hold language on this thing was make the sky blue, I might be interested. But the language that I heard was changing something that we don't know needs to be changed. I think we are way ahead. So again, you have to support your staff. Understand that. You have an excellent staff. Chris, excellent. Amy, excellent. I've always been a cheerleader for Amy. So I want to go back. I'm gonna be like Sean and tell a little story here, and go back about 3.5 years ago when the city was having conversations about sewage rates or trash rates and that sort of stuff. And the city staff knew that was coming. You know, I had heard it a few times that, You know, there's something big coming, and it's going to happen, and it has to happen. And now all that did have to happen, but the way it happened was bad, and politically it was horrible. And that's my worry here. If you give them an open sketchbook, and then all of a sudden something happens and it's done and nobody knew what happened, you know, it's bad. I have a lot of faith in this council. So again, to shift the gears one more time, I'm going to talk about that. So what does it take to get your citizens involved in these types of things? You know, it's events like tonight. And some people would be disappointed that this place isn't packed and out into the street. But we all know that that doesn't happen hardly at all. So how do you get them here? How do you get them not only here, but to be involved? And my worry is tonight, if you vote to just give these folks an open ticket, you're going to alienate everybody that's sitting out here that has come up here and said to you, this is what the city says, the citizens of this town. And like they said, nobody else is opposed to it tonight. I mean, putting it off is not an issue. So that would be my concern. And so there's my story. I'm going to go back to that 4 years ago. I'll go way back. Before the Parks and Recreation was run by the city, it was run by volunteers, myself included. I sat up there on a council and ran all the sports in Galt. Then we handed it over to the city. Boyce Jeffries took it over, did a great job. Everything was good. So I was very involved in those days, tried to stay involved as much as I could. When did I get out of it? When I lost the inspiration. When the council members and the city manager didn't inspire me anymore. Why would I go to these events? Why would I be involved if I'm just beating my head against the wall? Move up in the timeline a little bit. I was very uninvolved for many years. Been back in the city, and then we had a city manager that inspired me. Met with him, talked to him, learned some things. They started up an economic development program, got involved in that. It was very helpful, I think, for the community and for the businesses of Galt. And then we got a different city manager. That all went away. I was uninspired. I stopped coming, stopped being involved. But I was inspired by Chris, so I got back involved with the Planning Commission. So that, to me, is more about the vote tonight. I think as council members, you just have to think about your citizens and what they want. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Jean Davenport.
Leaving already? I am Gene Davenport. I live in the city of Galt. I just want to point out to the folks from Mr. Cooper's office, everybody that's come up here and talked tonight has agreed on their belief in what's going on. And every single person has used their full 5 minutes. That's how passionate we're going to be about this. This is not a popular thing that you guys are undertaking. I totally get that. This thing was, excuse me. I want also, on Jay's note, want to congratulate the Liberty Ranch High School cheer squad for first place. I have 2 granddaughters that are in the Junior Hawks. They're going to be there. It was just really exciting to see that on TV. So, this thing was pushed around prior to this current council. It's been out there for a while. And it was brought up, in short bursts, just conversational pieces. But how it got to this point without any clear foresight or any clear communication from the city to the citizens, I think that's a problem. At the last meeting, the council meeting that I spoke, I brought up the fact that during the July meeting, the Lewis Group was supposed to approach Congressman's office about how to change the law, if it's feasible, this, that, and the other. The city wasn't going to get involved. Then Sean you actually talked to the city manager about that. You were not informed. You didn't know the city was approaching them and talking about this. And in a paper today in Lodi, it said that the Lewis Group gave the city a $5,000 grant to talk to the congressman's office. So, at least if I read the article right, that's what I got out of it. That being said, why are we at this point now? I mean, look how far along it is. The congressman's staff is here, kind of like laying out how this is going to proceed, when we don't even have a definite plan in place of what the Lewis Group wants to do. We got to stop right now. You can't go forward with this. How can you put the cart in front of the horse? You're doing a disservice to the citizens. You're going to take all the goodwill that's been built through Parks and Rec and what they're trying to do with the flea market. Who knows what the plans are, what it's going to be? Is it another gas station? I mean, you know, the way things are going, I just don't understand that, you know. You also, you know, like it starts with the committees that you form too, and you have people on these committees that took part of the interviews for the new city manager. After the meet and greet, I talked to a few people on that committee, and they were really high on one individual, and most of the council at that time, after that meeting, leaving, saying, yeah, my wife liked him, my daughter liked him, I liked him. You know, there was a lot of positive feedback. Well, the next day, you guys vote 3-2 to you know, not to hire the guy, with no explanation why. Really, it's just you're going to go back out and do a search again. He was good enough for the city of Sacramento, but he's not good enough for Galt. Here's a kid that was from Galt. He had local ties. He could come in. We've got to stop doing things and putting the burden on another person to come in and fix. Like Tom is going to be leaving soon. He has to. We have to get a city manager in place. We can't fix what we do wrong now. We still haven't fixed that misplaced decimal from the last city manager in the contracts. What are we going to do with that? You know, but it's real, but we don't get any feedback on it. You know, you get the people mad about the garbage rates. People get angry, but we get no feedback. The search firm for the new city manager put out, you got to be communicative, you got to be integrated into the community, and you got to be open-minded. I don't think we've got that from our current administration, to be honest with you. He's done everything that he's been asked to do to the point, but what do we know what he's been asked? What direction have we been able to give? We got to come in here and try and stop something that nobody's in favor of. And each one of us represents 65% of our neighborhoods. So we're over that threshold that the state mandates you have to have at a city council meeting. Isn't that what it is, 65? But we got to stop and think what we're doing now and how we're proceeding. We're not proceeding with openness. This, literally, at this point, it's a done deal, unless you guys vote no tonight. It's going to happen. So without even knowing what they're going to build, they're going to have carte blanche. They're going to have a green light. You go, fellas. Doesn't matter what it does to our community. You know, we got to stop this nonsense. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene.
Robert Crowdy.
Robert Crotty, concerned citizen of Galt. I was appreciative of having staff members come here tonight. I don't know if you were here when I was speaking at the pulpit earlier. Okay, that's great. I'll give you a copy of my comments. I wanted to make sure that people heard that. Kurt Campion was not available to hear that, but you should all understand that Kurt Campion, as a council member today, was the head of planning and also a assistant manager for many, many years, going way back. But I remember way back when I first came to Galt in '78, this building was just being accomplished and being built. Again, it was built without an assembly bill requirement. The Civic Center, which is now the Littleton Center, was built with a federal grant with no assembly bill requirement on Fairgrounds property. I was amazed to come to a little town 4,000 people, but we didn't have much of a recreation program. It was wonderful tonight to hear from Matt, from the old GARC, Galt Area Recreation Commission. They got $2,000. $2,000 is what the city gave them, even though they had an operational market called the flea market at the time, raking in hundreds of thousands of dollars. I couldn't understand it, so I started investigating. I wanted my kids to be involved in sports. I grew up in Southern California in the San Fernando Valley. Our high schools were within 5 minutes of each other, 3,000, 4,000 population high schools. I wanted my kids to have the best, so I worked hard to do that. But our kids played on the elementary school sites, the grass sites with gopher holes in them. Harvey Park was not renovated. There was no light system. It was all done by volunteer people, no city help. We didn't have an east side development. It was all west side, no traffic lights. I was on the city council. Kurt Campion was the assistant manager and head of planning. Lisa Guire, the wife of our city manager, was the city clerk at the time, did notes verbatim, and we have VCR tapes of those meetings to verify that verbatim was done correctly. Before that, I asked the Galt Area Recreation Group people, call them the Committee for Parks and Recreation, to please help me in getting an audit done. Our city treasurer's dad was on the Parks and Rec Committee at the time, and in this same building, we have people like Orville Fletcher, Bob Kawasaki, Public Works, city manager. Everyone was here at the meeting because they didn't want to have an audit done, and I had the votes, 3-2 vote to have an audit recommended to city council. The person that backed out, our city, his dad, okay? Mr. Farrell's dad backed out. So I couldn't get an audit done then. I paid my bills, paid my time, finally ran for council. I was able to ask council for me to meet with the auditors, to be the only city council member to give permission to meet with the auditors to find out what's going on. They gave permission, I did meet with them. I asked them the question, and this was the 6th year of a 6-year audit. Did you know anything about Assembly Bill 3773? No, they didn't know what it was, but if you charge more, we'll go ahead and audit it. I couldn't give them permission to do that, but our finance director was so upset, she sent a letter to you, Councilman Campion. She was so upset. She talked to the mayor, Tony Gora. At the meeting, when the guys come to show up, I'm asking a question. I sat right there, and I'm saying to them, do you know anything about Assembly Bill 3773? Tony Gora came unglued, shut me down, but I have a copy of the VCR tape, and I have a copy of the minutes. They don't match. Isn't it amazing what's stated in the written minutes, which are verbatim, don't match what was said on the tape? Why are people trying to hide audits? I couldn't get it audited when I went to council. I couldn't get Jim Cooper's staff to help me to get an audit done. They said the council could request it. Well, the council will never request it, but they did get an audit done. But there was no legal compliance. In other words, they stated in a public forum and in writing, they could not legally verify compliance with the Assembly Bill. I still don't think it's being done right because they changed it. Back in the day when Kurt Campion was on the planning group and working hard for the city, he'd actually meet with Boyce Jervis in his office and fill out time cards. That's how they did their abatement process. That's been changed over the years many times. And now we have this special cost allocation. It's very complicated accounting. My background's accounting. I know it's not complicated. It's done with smoke and mirrors to make it difficult. I do not understand, Councilman Campion, why you want this so much. You've wanted it before these guys were voted in. But in '86, when I was involved with Parks and Rec, and I was so upset with them not spending the money, 3 members of the council were kicked out of office, mayor, vice mayor, and an incumbent, 3 of them. John Williams of the Galt Herald said it'll never happen. It happened. It happened again most recently. You have 3 new members, a mayor, a vice mayor, and an incumbent appointee were kicked out of office.
I'm sorry, your time is up.
People are fed up, and I hope tonight that you've listened to these good people. I am so humbled to have this many good people come to this meeting and speak on a time when most people are working at 6 o'clock. The people in Galt work and travel outside this community and work hard. It's hard to come to a meeting. When I was on the council, we met at 7 o'clock so people can show up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Cardy. Thank you.
Chris Brossman.
Thank you very much again for giving us the opportunity as citizens to come up and voice our concerns. I've been to a lot of these meetings over the last year, and I think all of you know that I'm against selling assets. I'm just not a person that likes transferring ownership. Are we underutilizing some of our assets? I do believe we are. Is possible selling or transferring some of those assets away to the future? I can see a possibility of it. What I don't understand is why we have hooked ourselves or put ourselves in bed with one developer. If we are going to transfer assets, I would love to see it go out to a real estate company and put it on the market, and let's see what fair market value really is on this property versus working with just one developer. I don't understand when people give you, there's nothing free in this world. It was one of my lessons my dad drove through my head. When people give you $5,000, there's a reason they're giving you $5,000. It's because they plan on getting $50,000 back. I don't really understand the rush. You know, last council meeting, it was brought up that Paul and Sean were unaware that, you know, we were meeting with the representative type deal. I thought that was interesting. But you look at our finances, and Tom's done a good outlay of where we are and where we got, but reality is 2023. So we have time, guys. You know, this isn't something that has to be done instantly. I've proposed in the past that we put it on a ballot and let the citizens of Galt decide what they want to do. You know, that's kind of fallen on deaf ears, but obviously I've got a few people in the crowd that agree with me there. I, again, don't understand the rush, and it seems like we are in a big push. What is the rush? You know, each of you guys, I have the utmost respect for everyone sitting on the city council. I think you want what's good for Galt. But why are we in this big push? You know, we've got budget funds for 2023, you know, looking at Tom's line. I don't think you guys have to make a decision tonight. And I would love to see it, again, go to ballot. And thank you again.
Thank you, Chris. Anybody else wants any public comment? Can you come to the podium, please?
She needs to go to
Please,
the
can you
podium.
come to the podium? Please, can you tell your name and?
My name is Joya Parrish, a happy resident of Galt for the third and I hope final time. One thing that I'm not hearing at all is the emotional part of it. We're talking about taking parts that encompass the library, Veterans Field. These are memorials, so how can you even think about giving those places away? Marion Lawrence was a very dear friend of mine. We have a library dedicated to her. Anytime during the week you can go there, you can see the huge parking lots always full. Recently, through Barbara, we went on and built a Rose Garden Memorial at the library. And I'm thinking about the people that are waiting to get spaces for their loved ones and say, well, I don't feel justified if you're going to grab that. And about the kids, the library. Oh, we'll build a new one. I'm sure it will be on the other side if that's your plan, or whoever plans it. But this side of town matters too. And the fact that the library is always busy tells me how much it's needed here. I like to think that Galt will remain. I know nothing stays the same. That's why I've moved a couple of times. My husband passed away. I came back, bought a house, and I'm here. I don't like hearing that the council would decide that. I don't like the fact that I never heard any conversation tonight. People refer to the council's decision. It's not your decision. Your decision should be made based on your people in Galt. And if they want this, as the gentleman just suggested, then there should be put on the ballot. That tells us all we're doing the right thing. Mismanagement of money is a history in Galt. Maybe we wouldn't be so far behind if a few years ago we didn't have that mess with the city manager, et cetera. All I'm saying is give the people a chance to have the life that they want and that they deserve. And the kids. There's nothing in this town for children. Let's think about that. Think about betterment for the lives of the children. Put your heads behind that. How can you come up with money to fund the center while everybody's trying to do it themselves? Parks and recreation, you know, it's a big thing. Families are now having to pay so much money. If they have 2 kids to play a sport, it's ridiculous. Sports kids should grow up with. I grew up with that. I'm sure many of you did. You know, we played in the streets, we played wherever, but we played. But let's not sell Galt out, please. Make your conscience be because you heard the people. That's all I want to say. But you're doing a good job mostly.
Thank you. Now we can open for council discussion.
I'll start it off here. Well, first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming because, you know, regardless of if the council or staff get badgered about something or it's compliments like the one Joy just gave us that says we're mostly doing a good job, thank you. We do appreciate the people that show up because like somebody else said, I think it was Gene Davenport, that, you know, it's hard to even get people to come out to meetings. So, I mean, we'd like to see this increase. And it's too bad that something controversial has to, you know, promote interest. But I want to touch just quickly on a few things that were said. One, you know, Sam started it off with the kind of the business model. I completely agree. Look, I am a big antique fair swap meet guy. My dad and I would do that. That was our thing. I go to the Sacramento Antique Fair under the X Street Bridge. I go to the Turlock swap meet with, you know, I'd go there with my dad or other friends. I go to some farmer's swap. The Lodi Street Fair. These are bustling. These are not declining places. These are very good. Lodi Street, the X Street Antique Fair, you know, 300 plus vendors. The difference is it's the type of vendors that they have there. These are weekend markets. These are things where people that maybe don't do this as a sole, you know, they sell antiques on the side or they do whatever on the side. The kind of vendors you see at the extravaganza or other events we have here in town where they do that on the side. People that work on Tuesdays and Wednesdays can't go be a vendor selling, you know, Scentsy or whatever on the side. And on the flip side of it, not only are you getting those kind of vendors, but you're not getting the people that are going and shopping there because people are working on a Tuesday, Wednesday. It's like Sam said, the model is completely outdated. And look, and I say it's outdated because, like, told you how many places I go. You know how often I go to the Galt flea market? Hardly ever. I hardly ever go because there's nothing there I'm interested in. It literally doesn't even interest me at all, what they have there. But I'm interested in still having the market. I think that it is a golden goose. I think shame on Galt for letting it get to a point where we depended on it so heavily and, you know, past administrations just basically just got too relied too heavily on that market, and they would always be there. And then the minute we hit speed bumps, it's panic. And I think we need to really listen to some fresh ideas. I did go to the market about 2 months ago, as a matter of fact. When I heard the market plan kind of idea, it was when we were doing the forums for people. And I walked around and I talked to a bunch of vendors and I asked them how long they've been selling there. And, you know, and some of them were like 20-something years I've been selling here. And I asked them ideas. I asked all of them, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? What do you think we should do? The weekend market was the #1 idea that everybody liked. They all thought it was a phenomenal idea. And I told them, well, why don't, you know, staff has been telling us we cannot compete with Denios and these other markets. It's just too hard to do that. But they brought some things to our attention there's other things that our market has they don't have. We don't charge admission. We don't charge parking. So we have an advantage, and like some other people said, the Galt flea market has been, I mean, it's known like out of state. So I feel like we need to, you know, and I don't blame the managers of I don't blame the market managers of those people. We've had many managers that have ran the market over the years, but I feel like their hands are tied. I feel like that Galt as a whole haven't really invested in its golden goose. We've just become complacent, and we just let it continue on the way it is. And we just refuse to do something. But now it's like, oh my God, something's going on. We got to do something. So I love hearing the ideas, and I think, you know, everybody said some good things. So I just want to finish off with my closing statement here, and I'll let my other staff here, or my other fellow council members say some things. But, you know, I know this market plan was something that was carried forward from the old city manager. We all know that. And we all know the state of the city that he left us in. So it makes me really be cautious to push anything forward that was from his tenure. I will also say that there has been some very bad decisions and deals made in the past on bad or misinformation or even the lack of information, which is exactly what I feel like this is. So I ask our council tonight to consider not approving this. Instead, let's wait to see what the conceptual plans are for this group. We've decided that that's what we've let them do. Let's see what those plans are. Let's bring that plan forward. Let's then present that to the people in the right manner so we have something to show these people so they can say, well, you know what, I actually like that plan. That is kind of a good idea. Maybe I will support that, or maybe they still won't support it. But they don't have anything to see. And we've decided, you know, last July that that's what we were going to do. I think we should wait on this. I think we should let the Lewis Group present their plan, and then if they come with something that the community supports, and then the council, on behalf of the citizens, can support, then we can move forward with changes if they're needed. But until that happens, I think it's our duty as elected representatives of the citizens of Galt and these people that spoke here tonight to not approve this tonight. I think it would be very irresponsible for us to do so.
Thank you, Sean. I view it a little differently than you, Sean. You know, I look at the planning process, and I know it's one that takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, and right now we don't have a plan, and I agree with that. But I view this more as a concurrent process, that you work on the plan, at the same time you work on other elements that are also necessary if you're going to ultimately move forward. And as far as that goes, I mean, I look at, and I've heard what Mr. Cooper's staff has said. My understanding of how a bill goes through the legislature. Right now, there is nothing to really deny because the spot bill has no language. So by not moving forward, we've done basically nothing. I mean, we haven't approved anything. We haven't denied anything. If we move forward, at least we have something to evaluate. You know, and as far as what I've heard a lot of concerns tonight, and it sounds like the flea market's going away. What are we going to do? We're going to sell the property. It's one-time revenue. Well, I can tell you that any bill that we're to move through in order to get my approval would, one, have to ensure long-term financial sustainability for the Parks and Rec Department. It would make no sense to approve a project that doesn't accomplish, at a minimum, what the market does or has historically done in terms of revenue. That would make absolutely no sense in my mind. Secondly, I think that the guarantees or provisions that limit the revenue to Parks and Rec, I don't have a problem with that staying. That's the way it has been. I'm not sure that there shouldn't be some flexibility, but I can live with that. I don't see the flea market, in my mind, going away. I see the property maybe being reevaluated, redeveloped in a way, but I don't see the market going away because I find it difficult to believe that we can come up with another piece of redevelopment or development of that property that's going to replace that revenue stream. But I think we have a lot of property that is absolutely underutilized out there. And I think it's important for us as council members to take advantage of looking at what opportunities there are. And by simply saying no tonight, it does foreclose the door, and it doesn't foreclose it forever. At a minimum, it'd be at least a year. But I think that, staff did look at and evaluated, in my opinion, well, I don't remember the exact number, but there was more than just the Lewis Group. The Lewis Group happened to specialize in this type of development, partnering with public agencies. So that is why that was why they were ultimately selected, is my understanding. A woman spoke tonight, and I think she had a very good statement. She said, the vision for the future is to protect the legacy, and the legacy is the market. I think that by doing nothing guarantees failure. We see that the market is failing. I think it is incumbent upon us to at least evaluate what options are out there, and if they can improve the market and improve what is available for the Parks and Recreation program in the community. But to do nothing, I think pretty much ensures failure. And I don't think that's the right solution. I believe that most, if not all, council members sitting up here tonight would agree upon some of those basic principles, at least that I would want to see instilled in any future legislation and any future development out there. So that's just kind of where I'm at. I don't, there were other comments made, these are rash decisions or high-risk decisions. There is no decision here other than we bury our heads in the sand tonight and forget that we have a structural deficit, in the city budget, and we do nothing to improve flea market revenues or the potential for market revenues, which in turn are market revenues that enhance the park and recreation program for the city. I think by moving forward, with caution and concern, and prioritizing really what we want to see preserved on this site is prudent. That's all I have.
Councilman Abdulaziz.
Go ahead, Rich. Okay. We keep hearing people say we're getting rid of the market. I don't know where all this misinformation is coming from. I hear people say save the fairgrounds. What fairgrounds? If you look at the revenue stream, the economy has recovered from the Great Recession. So when the Great Recession happened, the market started going down. The economy recovered. Did the flea market recover? No, it still goes down. So I don't know if everybody knows how much money they spend in marketing that market, but I believe it's close to $60,000 a year. Is that So we do market. We've had Saturday and Sunday markets. We tried it last summer. We had abysmal attendance by the public. So our staff has really gone out of the way to learn some things and try new things. What did Ms. Clark say? If you don't plant some new crops of the failing crops, what's the point? Well, this is a new crop, and we're trying to come up with things to fix the revenue stream. Councils in the past have ignored the downward trend, and it's going to take a brave council to make change because people don't like change. Some people came up and spoke and said, no one wants this. I'm kind of find it strange when someone thinks they can speak for the whole entire town. I agree with, that's their opinion, and that's wonderful. I've talked to a lot of people who think we need to do something. We are not getting rid of the flea market, but you guys have to understand the revenue, we've lost 2/3 of the revenue, 2/3. Yes, we still make $1 million, but we've lost 2/3. It's going to take years to get this going. So if we wait and wait and wait,
Parks and Rec may cease to exist because that's where the big deficit is. So that's my opinion on that.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I first want to thank everyone that came out tonight, and then also those who have emailed and personal conversations we've had, even when we were playing phone tag and happened to meet up after the phone tag. I appreciate it. I appreciate the input from the community because that's who we represent. So there are a couple of things here. I have heard also the information that the market is going away. Jay, I like that idea about looking at the Notch property for a market. I really do. I mean, it's freeway close. There's a lot of different things that we could do. But as I said at the last council meeting, we have a responsibility to turn this thing around. I don't want to throw stones at anybody at all, and that's not my intent in this next statement. But what I do know is that over the last year, we've had to make hard decisions regarding Parks and Recreation, which is truly near and dear to my heart as a former youth sports coach, board member, kids played. I was on a board that was a Park and Recreation board for 8 years, and that's what we did. It is tough. It is tough to make these hard decisions about Parks and Recreation. So my fundamental philosophy is that we need to figure out a way as government, without going back to the people first. If you watched our last meeting, we had a presentation about long-term tax increases. No matter how you sliced it, every single one of those options were tax increases to our people. And Mr. Davenport gave me a hard time about being so adamant about not going back to the people for more taxes. So we need to do something. I know we haven't had a proposal from any group, and my understanding of this process is that the people are going to provide the proposal through the master plan. The Lewis Group is going to see if what they think they can do to help increase revenue will match our master plan. If it doesn't, like I said in July of last year, if that doesn't match our master plan, we're done. And I will be happy to ask Lewis Group to not continue. I just need a couple of points of clarification because I heard a couple of things. Did the language go from, my understanding is different, but did the language go from the revenue should be solely used to be substantially, or from substantially to solely over when that change happened in '82?
Substantially to solely, in that order.
So substantially to solely?
Yes.
Okay.
Substantially to solely, I'm told.
And then my other question is, when we talked about last meeting our risk assessment of the market, which would include evaluation of a new business model, evaluation of location, all of those things, when does that happen?
That's underway right now. In fact, let me have Chris Arias, who is managing, as Councilmember Campion put it, these simultaneous processes with the grant-funded Galt Market Community Plan process, which is separate from working with Lewis, and then the risk assessment, which is really taking a look at the market today and what would we need to do to the market today to reinvigorate it. But we have multiple processes going on in order to sort of fully inform the combined effort.
And that is correct. And the one thing I want to articulate more clearly, because it seems to get lost, is that the master plan process is a city-led planning process is not led by the Lewis Group. So the Lewis Group is not creating a plan and then presenting it to us. We are creating that plan in conjunction with the community and stakeholders to create a plan that we'll bring forward. The Lewis Group is a stakeholder as part of that group, but they will not be the creator of the plan. And as was said, I think Councilman Lozano mentioned, if there's not a component within that plan that they can't function with, then they go away. You know, that's something that they won't be here for. But it is a city-led process. It's a city plan. So we will have control of it. We are meeting with the design group, Williams and Padden, in a week, and then we are going to outline a public outreach schedule. So we're envisioning 3 public meetings to go over design concepts. We expect that to take a month. After the design concepts and we hear from the public, we'll create a couple concepts. We figure that takes another month. Then we come back to the community to kind of show those concepts that were created based on community feedback, based on stakeholder feedback, and then we look through to see which is the best option then to move forward with. So that process will involve the community all the way through, and again, the stakeholders. At that same time, we will then undertake that risk assessment that is being spearheaded by a different group. And Amy Mendez, the Economic Development Manager, is managing that, but I believe that's going to start also in March. So those 2 plans will work together and move forward. You know, and I do hear that, you know, we keep saying we don't know. We really don't know what that plan is going to look like. We are treating it as a blank slate. You know, the pen has not been put to paper yet, so we cannot say, you know, that the library's going, that we're having specific uses. The one thing we do know is that we do want the market to stay and remain on the site. We know that is an asset to the city, and we don't want to lose that asset. So with that asset, we will look at other potential uses for that site, and we're going to move accordingly. So at this point, I would say, you know, stay tuned for a schedule for public input into the market plan.
Okay, and then another question is, again, I go back to the Notch property, is that what is the, again, I just kind of pull everything out and go, what is possible? What might work? Is that Notch property an option for something in this plan?
It's in the Notch property.
I know it won't be part of the master
Yeah.
plan because we've already identified that area, but.
I'm not sure which property in the Notch you're referring to, but most of the property in that area, well, all of it really, is in private hands. So it would involve having willing private landowners then get involved in that. But if that was an option in our planning process, we certainly would entertain it. We wouldn't, you know, discount it for sure.
Okay. So let me just say this. I've received feedback from many community members. In fact, as late as today, I think we all received another email this morning regarding the feelings of the community. I would have to say that if, no matter the outcome, there are about 4 principles that I've heard from the community that we need to maintain. And the first one is all revenues and proceeds must continue to go to park and recreation programs, maintenance, and facilities. I had a meeting yesterday with a community member, and we were talking about whether it should be solely or whether it should be substantially. And in my mind, it's solely. The purpose of this is to free up money from the general, that's being used by the general fund, and use it for park and increase that money on the other end and use it for parks and recreation. Do I think that the city should totally abandon any input from the general fund to parks and recreation? Absolutely not. But if there's a revenue source in which there's more money than you need, then you wouldn't need to use general fund money like in the past. And so And that frees up money to use for police officers on the streets, all of those things that the city is required to by law, and other, I'm not just saying police, but other general fund opportunities. The other thing is I don't think I wouldn't support the one-time sale of any of the 44 acres. I mean, there has to be an ongoing revenue stream to fund Parks and Recreation from this property. That was the intent of the legislature or the state when they gave it to us as a city, was this is a gift, like many people have said, to be used for Park and Recreation. To sell it for a one-time, however much money it is, would make no sense. And so, and then I think that the third thing is we really need to look at different uses of the property. They all need to be explored. At the end of the day, if the community comes up with a market, and I don't like using just market because I'm going to just say fairgrounds property, all of those acres, and says, this is what we want, then that's what we go with. And if it doesn't fit what the Lewis Group thinks they can work with, then we don't do business with them. I think Park and Recreation programming and rentals are not designed, just as a general concept, not designed to sustain programs entirely. You look across the state and the region, nation even, and you see that general funds don't, and Park and Recreation programming and rentals don't sustain the programs entirely. There's always other money that gets put in. And sometimes it's general fund, and sometimes it's market revenue that we've had for years. And just to address the flea market issue, because I've heard that quite a bit. Hey, I've heard the flea market's going to go away. It nets $1.5 million a year. I think with this risk assessment that we're doing, we can, like Mr. Mitchell said, increase, look at the business model and see what we can do differently. Does that mean expanding it? Maybe it does at the end of the day. Does it mean contracting it to the area that it would use at an optimal level? It could mean that too. But just to throw that $1.5 million away makes no sense. And I think other people have said that as well. So I think it needs to also stay to continue to bring some more revenue. As I heard Mr. Hagelin say earlier, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the process in which the language gets submitted to Mr. Cooper's office and his staff, that is a public process where can we put timelines in that language to say if it's not done in this project timeline that that it goes away, or how could we do that? I guess that's my question.
The legislation can be written in any manner that is acceptable to the council to include maybe performance measures of some sort or type, whether those performance measures are driven by a timeline or by a specific Galt market community plan coming about, or driven indeed by the risk assessment. Or it could be a case that the legislation could be written in a manner that if none of that happens, nothing happens.
Okay, thank you for answering that. And I forgot to thank Mikey and Roy for coming tonight and being a part of the process and listening to our people as well, our community members. So thank you, and thank Assemblyman Cooper for entertaining our ideas here. That's all I have to say for now.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment real quick?
Yeah,
I just want
sure.
to comment back to what Kurt said earlier and a little bit with Rich. First of all, Kurt and I always agree to disagree. So I have a lot of respect for you, Kurt, although we typically don't agree on a lot. But I want to touch on a couple things you said. You're making it sound like me saying no to this means I'm just going to bury my head in the sand. Those are your words. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, yeah, we need to do something. But this, I don't believe, is what the right thing is at this time. I'm talking about the timeline and the way it's being presented. I know that we have a deadline and all that, and I think the perception here is, the perception from the people are that they're not against anything that's ever going to be presented. They're just against doing something with this bill now because they feel like we're putting things in motion that are not going to be stopped. And you can sit here all night long and say, oh, we can stop it. But let's be honest. Once things get moving, it's going to be just really easy just to let that happen. Vice Mayor Lozano just mentioned about, we need to analyze the business model. We need to, the market's not going away. Well, first of all, we have a standing contract with Lewis Group that gives them exclusive rights to purchase and develop property. That's all they're interested in doing, is buy property. So if you're against a sale of property, then you have to be against this process we're doing now. It's cut and dry. I can show you many different ways. It talks about transfer of ownership, purchase of property. That's what it means. And they're only interested in developing. They even said, personally to me as well, they're only looking at like 30 acres or so. They're not looking at 5, they're not looking at 10. You can't get to 30 acres without touching the Galt flea market. So is the Galt flea market going away? Most likely, if Lewis Group gets their way, that's what's going to happen. It'll be very easy to just say, you know what, let's just develop it, let them whatever like that. And once we start down that path, we have a big rock sitting on the edge of the cliff right now, and we're ready to push it off. And once that rock goes, it's going to be very hard to control that rock. And so, this might seem like a very small decision that we can remain in control of, but this is the decision that will very easily just spin out of control for us. And if we want to look at the business model, like you're saying, Rich, and do all these things, which is a great idea, we can do all those things without changing the restrictions on the deed. We can do those things now. We can bring in an expert and have them look at the market and decide what we need to do, and we can do all of that. We don't need to change the restriction. I mean, it was there for a reason. It's protecting us from ourselves. Once we lift that, then it's just anything goes. And it will be very easy just to go down that path. And that's my biggest problem with it. I think that's what the citizens that have spoken here tonight, I think, that we have to be very careful right here, because regardless of what you guys may think, this is the biggest decision that this council, or maybe the council after us, or the council after this, or any council that's been in the last 15 or 20 years has ever made. This is bigger than Walmart. This is bigger than anything. This is huge, huge. What we're doing, what we're setting, this little step we're taking right now. It's a baby step right now, but it's huge. It has such magnitude. And for a lot of people that have lived their entire life, like I have, they understand the magnitude of the situation. And that's why they're so worked up about it, to be honest with you. I just think pushing this off and letting this reevaluation of the market and what we can do, why don't we look at that? Why have we not done that before? Why have we just now doing that? I don't understand why we haven't done that. I mean, honestly, look, if my business starts to decline, I don't sell my building, just call it quits. I think about what I need to do, and I make some changes, and I do it. And I can't make changes one day. I can't be like, oh, I'm going to start reopening Saturdays, and I open one Saturday, and people don't show up and go, oh, well, that was a lame idea. I guess I'm going to go back to being closed on Saturdays. I mean, even the market vendors told me, they said the Saturday once in a while, it doesn't work for them. They need a commitment. They need a schedule change for the long haul. And this is coming from the people that have been selling there for 20 years and such. So, again, everybody's got their own opinions. I value everybody's opinion. I respect Kurt's opinion. He's very experienced in matters of the city. He's the most experienced person up here. I value your perspective on it, Rich. Ms. Lamson and Mr. Sandhu, but I'm just telling you, I just want to, again, stress the magnitude of what we're about to do right now.
First of all, I would like to thank you, all the citizens, they come today to speak about the plan. This plan, I think they start back in 2017 or 2018. My biggest problem is this point. Why we going to build this intent and we have no plan? We always vote for something if we see the light in a tunnel. I did understand this plan, but there is a lot of negotiation maybe is forward with the Lewis Group. They are a developer. And city is the owner. When you're doing negotiation, they might be, most likely, the developer wants to buy the property and develop it. But as a community, or as my opinion, I don't say no. And the second thing, community might want, okay, let's go make a partner with a lease. At this time, I does not know how the community wants, how my other council member wants as a lease. And the other thing, we have the idea we don't want to sell all the property. We just want to sell small portion of the property. But loose group, especially me, I'm not on this loop. I don't know who's talking to the loose group, how far and how apart you are in a negotiation. If the negotiation, for example, maybe with the staff or some other council member they know very close to, and that time we might be need, where the bell can go. If we don't have no plan, why are we voting for tonight, and how I can support myself with the citizen, how we can vote for something. And the other thing, if we vote, for example, if I'm not going to support this, we are not going to shut down the process. Process go. The only thing is the timelining. Timelining, why are we doing rush to judgment? It's the same process. This can come out after a year. And the gentleman from Jim Cooper's office, I believing in, if they promise us today, they can promise us after a year. We have a very good relation as a city council, or we have a very good relation as a personal. But that's my kind of thing. If we have a plan, we can only be like in same thing our council member could say, if we make a plan, we can put on the shelf. If 3 months put on the shelf, then start the project. Sometimes that project will be a more efficient way than when you start something and the plan is not done. So at this time, I heard a lot from citizens. I was elected with these people. These people have a concern. I don't know, I don't see nobody come to the podium. They'll say, okay, this is a good plan, let's pass this tonight. And that's kind of my problem. I will work with these people and we evaluate, and this tonight is very hard to support this one. And I certainly don't want it. This plan is good, because we need to do different way, because flea market, they're losing money. Yes, we need to make a plan. And then I'm talking about if they're losing money from last 10 years, what happened to the previous staff? Why they don't take action that time? I know I'm talking about if we're going to intend, like in this year, if we're going to intend next year, in my opinion, I will feel much confident what the plan is. All the citizens will be much confident because they already know what the plan is. And that's the way it is. But I'm with agree with all the comments with the council member and the staff. Thank you, staff. They're making their plan, but plan need to be transparent. Plan need to be, right now there is no plan. Even in the future plan, it needs to be transparent. The council member have to have some kind of information. I don't have nothing further, and if any other council member have any comment?
Did you want to say anything? You look like you want to say something. So, okay.
I always do.
So, there is no guarantee that this legislation will pass, correct? Correct. Okay, so we just talked about how this is a community-driven thing. So we get the community together, and we spend hours, and we've already had how many meetings?
We're anticipating 3 design meetings and then 2 concept meetings.
And we've already had previous meetings with staff time, and we're going to spend hundreds of hours on staff time and meetings and getting this all together. And if we go the route where then we go to Cooper's office after, we could get the whole plan, get it all pretty, tie a nice bow on it, spend everyone's time, take it to Cooper, and it fails. Sorry, just kidding. So that's the way I see it a little differently, that you need to find out if you can actually do it, if there's even an option. We may get a no right now, and this whole thing, we have to figure out some other way to fix the revenue stream. So there's 2 ways to see it, but I don't want to spend everyone's time and then to be turned down and say, no, you can't do that. So a year. So, but it's been years. It's been
2017, you had a grant, and you haven't spent the grant yet. Think about what you're talking about up there.
Mr. Crowdy, please.
It's hard
to
to
hear
hear comments made by the council that way.
Please, thank you very much. Thank you. Any other comment by the council member?
Making friends tonight, aren't I? The motion.
I don't know that it's a right time, but in my mind, I don't have a problem getting the verbiage passed. If you'll put on to.
Okay, Chris, come to the podium if you have a couple minutes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I wouldn't have a problem continuing on down the road if you guys will agree that any changes to this property are going to go to a public ballot, and we're going to vote it as a city to walk down that road or not. So as Kurt says, we've got this ball rolling. I have no doubt that Councilman Cooper can make this thing pass for us. What we, or I'll speak for, is concerned is giving this council and future councils the open checkbook to sell off assets. I like the comment that Rich made where he wants 4 things. I agree with all 4 things that you commented on. I'd like to see that in the legislation and say, okay, we're going to cover these other things have to happen for us to even take it to a ballot. If you guys want to write that in, I think that's fine. And as a public, I mean, to me, we're not giving you a blank checkbook. Not saying that you guys are going to take advantage of that, but future councilmen might take advantage of it. It's opening up the doors, and it's Pandora's door in my mind.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you again.
Thank you. So, Tina, you're going to read on recommendation motion?
I just have one.
You have comment?
Just one additional comment. Please, I appreciate the enthusiasm, but I don't want to be interrupted, please. We can, the beauty of this, I believe, is that we can pave our own road. And again, I want to go back to these processes that were outlined earlier that I mentioned after are public-driven processes. We keep saying, and I keep hearing, the Lewis Group, the Lewis Group, the Lewis Group. If the Lewis Group doesn't want to play ball with what we want as a public, then they'll go away. And I've said that for almost a year now. They just will. If the public doesn't want what they think they can work with, then they go away. I would be in favor of, as we potentially look at any kind of legislative change, putting those 4 topics in and putting a for certain timeline on it. Listen, Mr. Crowdy and I have met, I don't know, 2 or 3 times, one informally out in the parking lot, but the intent of this legislation is to provide for parks and recreation. That's what the intent is. That's why way back when they deeded the property, we've gone through this process. And so I don't have any misconception that we should do anything different than that. I just think we need to have the opportunity to do it. Listen, we're gonna get into budget stuff here in the next couple months, and we're still running a structural deficit. I think I owe it to the taxpayers and the voters of this community to look at every single option possible. We have over and over the last year talked about how prior administrations here have kicked the can down the road, and I don't want to continue doing that. I think we as an organization, again, owe it to our people to stop kicking the can down the road and make a difference. And so I just want to throw that out there so that people know exactly where I'm at. And that's where that's the basis from where I come from. And I don't think that our first reaction should be going back to the public for additional taxes. We may have to do that. The public may say, that's what we want. But what's that? Okay, so So what I'm saying is I don't think that that's what we need to do. I think we need to do other things before doing that. And so I will leave it at that and defer to my colleagues.
Thank you. Tina, you want to read the recommendation action?
Adopt a resolution authorizing staff to work with legislative leaders to introduce a bill with language authorized by the City Council during the upcoming legislative session pertaining to the 44 acres comprising the Galt Market and surrounding city-owned properties as regards the current deed restrictions on the properties.
Thank you. Do we have a motion out there?
So moved.
Motion moved by Councilman Kurt Campion. We have a second.
Second.
Second by Lamson. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Vice Mayor Lozano?
Aye.
Councilmember Farmer?
No, absolutely no.
Councilmember Campion?
Aye.
Councilmember Lamson?
Aye.
Mayor Sandu?
No. Motion passed 3-2. Motion carried. Thank you.
We did listen.
Any,
Okay, we need to move.
there is no communication on,
Are you-
anyway, next agenda item is J, City Clerk's report.
Nothing.
Comment by staff. Mr. Selling.
Yeah, just one quick thing. I wanted to kind of, take every opportunity to make everyone aware that the city, through a grant, was able to purchase a battery drop-off box that's been located in front of the police station. So you can basically deposit all your household batteries, no car batteries or anything like that, but just your, the ones you use in various electronic devices and whatnot. So it's free service, so drop off your batteries in there. Thanks.
Mr. Reyes.
Real quick, if you're not busy Thursday night, we have a busy planning commission. We have Dutch Brothers, a self-storage, a small apartment complex, and a climate action plan, and I think I'm missing one other project, but pretty full agenda for us. We're excited about that. And just an update on a couple grants that we do have going. As you recall, we were successful in getting a $160,000 SB2 grant to do some planning activity. You'll see that on your agenda for approval for awarding a contract on next meeting. And then just a quick update on the California Energy Commission grant. As was stated, it does have three components: the Climate Action Plan, the Carillion Boulevard Master Plan, and of course, the Galt Market Master Plan. The Climate Action Plan, the environmental document is out. I think we've given you copies to review. That is being heard at Planning Commission Thursday. Then it will be to City Council for approval or for consideration in March. The Carillion Boulevard Master Plan, the environmental document, we're reviewing that now. We're hoping to get that on the street for public review in March, and then April for Planning Commission, and then City Council in May. And then I think you're aware of the status of the Galt Market Plan component to that.
Thank you. Ms. Tyson. Ms. Vanstein.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Karnowski.
I have nothing to report on behalf of Chief Sockman, and I could not file Chris's very eloquent information, so I'll defer.
City Manager Haglund.
Nothing further.
Nothing further.
Kimberly. Council Member Campion.
Yeah, we had a HCP meeting last week and set the calendar for the next year. Looks like they'll be pretty busy, so that's about it.
Council Member Sampson.
Yes, I was able to, or I was privileged to volunteer at the Night to Shine event, the Tim Tebow Foundation Night to Shine. And it's a wonderful prom for some of our special needs citizens where they're just catered to and made to feel just wonderful. And it was just such an enlightening event. It's good to see the good in people. with that. And also, congratulations to Liberty Ranch High School. They won nationals in the non-tumbling varsity, one of the varsity cheer competitions, and that was in Florida. And the last time Galt cheer squad went to nationals was 14 years ago when I took them. We did not win then, but congratulations, Liberty Ranch took first place and a 14th place in another competition, so.
Vice Mayor Lozano.
Yeah, just one thing. I had the opportunity to attend the Tiny Smiles run this last weekend. It was fairly well attended, although I want to give my heartfelt recovery thoughts to Rick Kieser, who was unable to make it. He was ill, and so I'm hoping he gets well soon. It was a good run. There is rumor out there that it may be the last, but it was good. There were a lot of folks out there and a lot of runners as well as spectators. So it was a good time, and I look forward to the spring where we have a couple of events coming up. So,
Councilmember Farmer.
Just, yeah, on the Tiny Smiles, so unfortunately, I think it is our last year, but it was a great event, and apparently they just didn't raise enough money to actually give back, so they decided to do away with it, but I think it was something that was a good effort for many years. I just want to close out with just saying, again, my condolences to a friend and a customer of ours who lost his son, his services this weekend, so he knows who he is, so sorry.
Thank you. I attended the Benterworth Festival Wine and Food event. Great turnout, lot of local wineries and restaurant. I also attended the Business of the Month with Chamber. Congratulations to Mac Twain. Thank you. Anybody, any comment? If no further action, I'm going to adjourn.
I don't know what happened. You're such a good ace, man.
Ace.